Practical Anarchy, Guide to Self-Determination, Dicky, and this is the 9th part, I think, in the mini-series, which is designed to address things that come up on a regular basis, so we don't have to keep repeating ourselves, and also interesting subjects which are not necessarily covered in detail in the main book. So this one should be quite an interesting one, hopefully spark some debate. So, class, hierarchy and the limits of division in anarchism. Class is routinely treated as the master category of radical politics. Within anarchist circles, this often appears as an unresolved tension, whether anarchists must centre class struggle above all else, whether it risks dilution by addressing other forms of domination, or whether participants' social backgrounds affect their legitimacy. These debates persist, despite being largely misplaced. Class is not a dividing line within anarchism any more than race, gender, or disability. The defining concern of anarchism is hierarchy itself, not the social coordinates into which individuals are born. As Practical Anarchy, the book, makes clear, from its opening chapters, anarchism is not a politics of representation, but a politics of negation, the refusal of imposed authority in all its forms. Class matters because it is produced by hierarchical systems, not because it provides a moral ranking of people. Treating class as an internal fault line, therefore, misunderstands both anarchism's mentioned and method and purpose. So part 1. Hierarchy, not class, is the anarchist problem. Anarchism begins with a structural question rather than a sociological one. Who has the power to decide, and by what right? Class relations under capitalism are oppressive because they embed command and obedience into everyday survival. Employers direct labour, landlords control shelter, creditors dictate time horizons, and the state enforces these arrangements through law and violence. The injustice here is not that the wrong people hold these roles, but that such roles exist at all. Anarchism therefore does not ask which class should rule, it asks why ruling is tolerated. This is a decisive break from traditions that seek to seize, direct or democratise power or leaving hierarchical structures intact. As argued in Practical Anarchy, any politics that aims to capture authority rather than abolish it will ultimately reproduce domination, regardless of the class identity of those in charge. When class is elevated to a primary internal divider, anarchism risks importing statist assumptions wholesale. It shifts the focus from dismantling structures to adjudicating identities. In doing so, it mirrors the very logic of authority it claims to oppose. Some voices are elevated, others discounted, based not on action or behaviour, but on position. Part 2. Class is no more a legitimate divide than race. Within anarchism, few would accept the claim that race should determine political legitimacy. Racism is understood as a system, not a personal attribute, and opposing it does not require ranking people by racial background. To do so would replicate the logic of essentialism and exclusion that anarchists reject elsewhere. The same reasoning applies to class. Class, like race, is historically contingent and socially produced. It describes patterned relations of power, not inherent qualities of individuals. People do not embody class in a moral sense. They are positioned within class relations by systems they did not choose. To treat class as a dividing line within anarchism, therefore, confuses structural critique with identity politics. This confusion has practical consequences. When class is used as an internal boundary, debates drift from dismantling exploitation to policing who may speak, organise or theorise. As Practical Anarchy warns, such moves replace material critique with moral sorting, a form of soft authority that often goes unacknowledged precisely because it claims radical intent. Just as racism cannot be dismantled by reversing racial hierarchies, capitalism cannot be dismantled by elevating one class to dominance. Both require the abolition of the hierarchies that generate inequality in the first place. 3. the instability of class under contemporary capitalism. Even if one wished to treat class as a stable organising divide, contemporary capitalism makes this increasingly implausible. Class positions today are fragmented, unstable and overlapping. People move between precarious employment, unemployment, unpaid care, informal work and self-employment with increasing frequency. Debt, welfare, conditionality and surveillance further blur the traditional distinctions between worker, unemployed and excluded. This instability matters politically. Fixed class schemas failed to capture the lived reality of domination for large sections of the population. Migrants navigating hostile border regimes, disabled people subjected to punitive welfare systems, carers performing unpaid labour, students locked into lifelong debt and prisoners excluded from formal labour markets all experience coercion without fitting neatly into classical class categories. As Practical Anarchy argues, domination is intersectional in practice, even when theory lags behind. People experience economic pressure, legal control, cultural stigma, and bureaucratic violence simultaneously. An anarchism that insists on rigid class boundaries risks erasing these experiences rather than clarifying them. Class analysis remains indispensable, but class identity as a gatekeeping device is analytically crude and politically divisive. 4. Anarchist practice does not depend on class identity. Anarchist organising has never required credentials. Mutual aid, direct action, horizontal organisation are defined by how they operate, not by who participates. Historically, anarchist movements have included waged workers, peasants, artisans, intellectuals, migrants, unemployed people, and those outside formal economies altogether. What unified them was not class identity, but shared opposition to authority. In practice, anarchist activity proceeds from need rather than theory. Food distribution, housing defence, community repair, strike support and care networks do not ask participants to justify their class position before acting. As shown in Practical Anarchy, direct action is prefigurative. It embodies the relationships it seeks to generalise. Hierarchy is undetermined through practice, but resolved through internal classification. Attempts to retroactively impose class boundaries on such practices tend to fracture movements rather than after the fact. They transform living experiments into ideological battlegrounds, diverting energy away from building resilience and autonomy. 5. Class reductionism and strategic paralysis. There is also a strategic cost to treating class as an internal dividing line. Class reductionist arguments within anarchism often collapse into circular disputes over emphasis, vocabulary and authenticity. These debates rarely produce clearer strategy or stronger organisation. Instead, they encourage suspicion, fragmentation and disengagement. As Practical Anarchy notes, movements fail not only through repression but through internal exhaustion. When energy is redirected from collective problem solving to internal adjudication, capacity withers. Hierarchical systems benefit enormously from this dynamic, as it neutralises opposition without requiring overt force. By contrast, focusing on hierarchy as the central target aligns analysis with action. Workplace domination, housing control, border regimes, policing surveillance and bureaucratic coercion can all be confronted without resolving abstract debates about class primacy. This does not dilute class struggle. It situates it within a broader assault on domination itself. 6. Taking class out of the internal debate. To remove class as an internal dividing line is not to deny exploitation or material inequality. It is to refuse to reproduce hierarchy inside anarchism itself. Anarchism can maintain a rigorous critique of capitalism while rejecting the idea that some people possess greater political legitimacy based on their social origin. This distinction is crucial. When class becomes identity, it risks hardening into another hierarchy, one policed through language, tone and access rather than through overt authority. Anarchism's strength lies precisely in its refusal of such structures, even when they present themselves in radical form. Seventh conclusion: abolish hierarchy, not biographies. Anarchism's core ethical claim is straightforward. No one should rule over anyone else. The principle applies universally. It does not bend to class, race, gender, or background. To elevate class as an internal dividing line is to misunderstand anarchism's intent and to risk recreating the very systems it seeks to dismantle. Class, like race, names a condition imposed by hierarchical systems, does not confer moral worth, political purity, or revolutionary authority. An anarchism grounded in opposition to hierarchy rather than allegiance to identity remains coherent, inclusive, and materially dangerous to power. Taking class out of the internal debate does not depoliticize anarchism, it returns it to its foundation.